Today's episode is brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace is the easiest way to create a beautiful website, blog, or online store for you and your ideas. Squarespace features an elegant interface, beautiful templates, and incredible 24/7 customer support. Try Squarespace at squarespace.com and enter the offer code KINDAFUNNY at checkout to get 10% off. Squarespace. Build it beautiful. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the GameOverGreggy show. I'm one of your hosts, Greg Miller, alongside the producer.
It really is a shit show.
/ seducer, Nick Scarpino.
Yeah. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good to see you back from Austin.
It's good to see you back. I missed you. I felt like I had been gone a long time.
I think we all are around each other. So we pushed through a threshold after a certain point where we were all trying to just have our own lives. And at this point, why?
No.
We should all just be the same person living in the same room.
It's true.
And having sex with the same women.
Well,
so
now
what's,
you've made
what
no.
are you guys up to later? Is that
you
going to be...
You can touch my muscles if you want. Yeah.
Damn it, look at those things.
Over here, the pride of Long Island, Colin Moriarty.
It's good to be here with you today.
What are you doing to Superman's head?
Just clearing out the dust.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't use the piggy bank much anymore.
No.
I got a cup of change in my
it,
room
though.
now. A lot of change. There's a lot of change in it. That's all change. Shake them. Shake them by the mic. Yeah, see?
All right, you can continue.
All right, cool. Okay, I was just you go through my change. And over here, this is a big one, ladies and gentlemen. There's no Tim. Instead, co-writer and the director of Air, Christan Cantamessa.
Thank you, sir.
Christian, thank you so much for coming by.
It's my great pleasure.
I'm very excited to have you here. I've been around you for a long time, and I didn't even know it because you have this new movie coming out, Air. It's out. If you're watching this on YouTube, it's already out. If you're watching this over on Patreon, it's out Friday. Everybody go get it because you can get it in theaters or you can go get it on digital services.
Sorry.
It's like the bucket of Halloween candy.
I apologize. I don't mean to be disruptive.
No, it's fine. So you can go get it anywhere, all over the place. And this is big for you. Movies are big.
It's a big deal, yeah. I mean, it's my first movie,
Yeah.
and your first movie is always a big deal.
Yeah.
I hope people enjoy it and go see it. It would be a good start if people went to see it.
Yeah, that'd be
and enjoyed
helpful
it.
if people
Yeah.
went out and see it. Of course, links in the description to go get the digital version right now.
But we so it is theater and then VOD at the same
Same
at the
day,
same
yeah.
time. I
You're
love
the
that.
future. You're the
I love
future.
that.
That's what I'm
great.
always telling
I live
Nick
in
here.
the future.
I
That's
don't-
why I'm here.
Oh, God. Ooh, I like that.
I don't want
I hope
these.
this isn't the future.
I want this is how to be. I want to see certain movies in theaters, but they're very few and far between. I want to see other movies just when I can.
Fantastic Four.
I don't want to see that movie ever. I don't want it to exist in my
I'm
universe.
so sad. I want to see it, and I want to see it because I really do want to form my own opinion of this film. It's been so just blasted in the media lately, and I think it's ever so more because of the tweets that have come out and all that stuff. I feel bad for the filmmakers on that one.
Sure.
I do want to go at least try to support it, but having said that, here's my issue: is that this film is out, which is fantastic. There's another great film coming out. There's good films coming
There's
out
too many
more
other things to see.
that I can't. I'm like, I'd rather spend my time watching Air than a movie that I'm probably going to enjoy way more than Fantastic Four. No, I mean,
Thank you.
I've seen it already,
I
so
paid
I did
him to
enjoy
say
it.
it.
No, to be clear, Nick and I
Probably
have
not gonna be
seen
able to say
Air.
it.
We've watched Air.
We have watched
We
it.
enjoy Air. I sign off on Air.
I sign off on Air
Period.
as well.
We're going to talk
I
about
do.
Air at topic 2. I never tip my hand to the audience, let them know. Topic 2, Colin. Going to talk about Air and
Air.
making movies and doing all these different
Oh,
things.
so you're talking about Air the movie?
Not just not like the
nitrogen
molecules,
and oxygen, carbon.
not the
Okay.
molecules. Just the fact of making this movie with Norman Reedus from The Walking
I
Dead.
wanted to just make sure that we were talking. You know, everyone knows that we're not talking about the atmosphere.
I agree with you.
Okay.
Topic number 1 we're going to talk about is that you wrote a bunch of cool video games.
I worked on a bunch of cool video games, yes.
You did the Manhunt.
I did Manhunt.
I love Manhunt.
Yes.
You did Red Dead.
Red Dead.
Redemption.
I worked on Grand Theft Auto San Andreas.
Yeah, I've never heard of that one.
Yeah, small game.
This Deus Ex, who I used to call Deus Ex.
No. I worked on Shadow of Mordor.
Yeah.
That's the most recent one I've done.
And then
something that I just old stuff.
Then you worked on Volume, the game.
Yeah, sure.
Then you wrote Batman?
Batman, and yeah.
Shadow and Mordor.
The one with-
Red Dead.
What are you doing?
I'm
Yeah,
having
it's
fun.
happening.
I'm having
Making
fun
a
with my friend Christian, everybody. Back off.
All right.
And I manufacture credits, which is great. Great for my career.
So you did a whole bunch of awesome games. Shadow
I did
Mortar,
some
Red Dead, Manhunt.
some fun games, and I worked with some really fun people. So I had a
All right, that's where we're going to start
good
talking. But
experience.
first, ladies and gentlemen, if you didn't know, this is the Game Over Greggy show. Each and every week, 4, sometimes 5 best friends gather on this table. Each bring a random topic of discussion for your amusement. I never realized how much I'd missed Tim until right then.
Tim really does it hard.
He does it really hard.
I do.
You just do the
I
little
do
tap.
like
It's
a
not even nearly the
very
same.
superficial sort of. It's like a wipe when you say this table. I just got like. I use it because there's so many different specs of shit on this
I
table.
know.
after
We
this. I'm
really
like,
this
you
table
gotta
is
get out of
fucking.
the
This table's seen things. This table's seen stuff.
This
We don't get a
table-
new table till we get an office.
All right.
Or
Or until this
studio.
one, and until Kevin inevitably just falls
Falls
right
through
this
it
one.
like Chris Farley. Like you know you're going to. Nope. If you like the show, toss us a few bucks over on patreon.com/kindafunny and get every episode early. If you don't want to give us any money, no big deal. Everything goes up on youtube.com/kindafunny for free, Monday through Thursday, topic by topic, until Friday when we post the entire show as an MP3 in one big video. All right, so Christian, here's what I want to know. How does one get started writing video games?
Oh my god. When I started when nobody was starting. I don't know. I started in the mid 90s. 96. In Italy. So I don't have the most
Kids
traditional.
move to Italy.
Moved
If
to
you want-
Italy.
if you
and
want to do this.
It was a very different industry back then, but it was fundamentally a time when people were writing the book on how to tell a story in games, because there were some seminal games that had story in them. I had played Maniac Mansion on my Commodore 64
Sure.
and The Secret of Monkey Island on my Amiga. And those kind of games kind of showed me that there was a lot of potential in the medium. But those people working on those games weren't writers or game designers. Again, when I started, the word game designer didn't really mean that much. It was just some companies didn't even have game designers, let alone writers. I mean, there was the occasional writer that was also designing the game or was coming in for a week to do some dialogue for the VO. So it was a very unconventional job opportunity. But I started working with friends of mine because they needed. It was an adventure game that it's long and forgotten, but they needed a story. They had the technology, they had
Sure.
the engine, they had an idea for the game, but they needed to tell a story with the game. And so they kind of came to me, and I was always into games, always into movies. I was making movies with my friends when I was 13 years old. So so people that are creatively doing stuff naturally gravitate to each other. And in Italy, especially in the small fishing village where I come from, there's a lot of people doing games and doing movies. And
I was going to say, did the town try to revolt against you? I'm
the
like,
town
no, you
with
have to raise
pitchforks,
pasta.
and I had to escape. Actually, I had to leave.
You're never allowed
And I
back.
was like a pilgrim. I was welcomed by the United States. No, I actually ended up going to London and Paris and Scotland and then here. It was a long pilgrimage. But so that's how I started. I basically started, and I remember starting and having to figure out how to write for a video game and how to design a video game. And there was nothing, no books, nothing. And a new website had just started. And I was like, this is really cool. And the name of this website was gamasutra.com. And it was
Yeah.
like brand new. I think I registered on it and I was like number 4 or something. Those were the days.
Those were the days.
Yeah, things have changed since then. Now that you can study game writing and game design at university. There's like a game design curriculum.
Sure.
It's unbelievable.
It's
and
easy
great.
now.
Now the kids have it too easy. We were making it up back in the good old days. That said, I'm gonna get my David Crockett hat off, and but that's how I started.
Okay.
I started because there wasn't a lot of people doing it, and there was a desire in the industry to become more of a storytelling medium, and clearly, it's just one avenue for games. Minecraft and Flight Simulator can show us that you can do perfectly well in games without having a story.
Sure.
But I think it's a little bit like saying that cinema doesn't need a story because there's documentaries. I mean, sure, there's like just different ways of utilizing the medium, and telling a story in a game is just something that I really enjoy doing, and it's a little bit different than telling it film or in a
Sure.
comic book or that. So
That's an interesting way of looking at it too, because I've often thought about, because I mean I come from the world of film. I love films, and games are sort of a secondary thing as far as entertainment mediums are concerned. But it's interesting to note that, like, because you see a lot of games trying to tell more stories now, but maybe it's worse. It's not the right way to think about it as an evolution of that particular form of entertainment, as more of just growth. Where, like, you are right. Like, if you look at the biggest game, like Minecraft is probably one of the biggest games, if not the biggest game on the planet right now, and there's not the traditional level of storytelling being told there. Yet you have other games, most notably, like I just played Arkham Knight, and I just finished it, and it tells a phenomenal high level of story. So it's kind of cool. It's cool that they get that. And you're right. In film, there really isn't. We don't have that level of growth with it, right? Where there aren't films that can keep a lot of people's attention that are largely visual. Like, we crave that story, we crave that one-to-one engagement with the characters in the story, and if we don't get that, we get bored immediately, and then the phones come out, and then I have to yell at people in the theater, and I have yelled at people.
Have you yelled at them?
Oh yeah,
I got close to it.
I'm like, bro, I'm not in your damn room right now.
Yeah.
I'm not. This is not your room. Put your phone away.
Yeah.
And then people just don't care. People don't care. I'll be like, stop doing that. And they're like, pff.
But are you putting on the scary voice, or are you just doing it?
I just did my dad voice. Hey, put that thing away.
That's not good. That's
not good?
You got to get up and you got to.
I gotta work on it? Is that
you
what you're
got to
telling me?
echo throughout the theater.
Son of a bitch.
That's what I've had to do.
I need
before.
you.
So how do you go? I want to know that.
I was mesmerized by that conversation.
Oh, so it's one of those you always want to do it. Colin, you always want to do it. You want to yell at people in theaters. Everyone wants to yell at somebody in the
Colin
theater.
yelled at someone. What, you just yelled at someone the other day
He just yelled at me earlier.
for walking. Someone like walked by you the other day the wrong way and like bumped into you and like kept walking. And you're like, no, it's cool. I'm just standing here. Don't worry about it.
Well, the newest thing that I like to do now is to stop as we've talked about, is to stop the
the plane.
there's no airplane,
that's what
there's
that's
no
what it
airplane
was.
etiquette anymore.
That's what it was.
So people just like get up and just start walking forward, like when the plane gets to the gate, when you're really supposed to wait for people to get off. And so I just, like, when the plane lands now, I just get up and stand in the middle of the aisle.
Yeah.
So that no one behind me can
And
has
people,
any prayer.
and no one will say excuse me
You
or
should
anything.
build a barricade with your suitcase as well.
Yeah.
And just prevent anyone from ever leaving.
It's all about a lack of etiquette.
It
When
is.
people don't have etiquette, holding
Society
doors
breaks
open,
down.
thank you, please, and thank you. It's not that fucking hard. And when you
not.
don't adhere to those protocols, I have to say something about it. I'm sorry, that's just who I am.
But I noticed something about you stopping people in the aisle the other day, was that not one person tried to excuse themselves and go around you because they knew they were wrong. They knew you were in the right, and they knew that by saying excuse me and trying to push past you, they were going to be even more of an asshole than they currently were.
Yeah.
Someone's got to stand up for what's right.
I do.
Airplane etiquette.
Airplane etiquette is so
Stand up for what's right.
It's so important.
It's the line in the sand, Christian.
It's
We
the only
fly
thing that
all
separates
the
us
time.
from the wolves.
It is
Colin.
that, and the fact that we have airplanes and the wolves don't have airplanes.
Well,
but
that's that you don't know that.
well, that's I. Well,
it's another
I
one of them,
probably
it's
know
another
that.
one
You've
of those
never seen a wolf?
undocumented wolf flights.
It's just, the camera zooms into the wolves, just like
etiquette's very important. I feel like we've flown.
I don't know why he's doing this.
I've literally flown hundreds of times in my life, especially because my mom worked for Delta when I was a kid. So it's like it wasn't always like that. You know, people had respect and got off the plane in an orderly fashion, got on the plane in an orderly fashion too. Now everyone's just taking their time, taking up all this space, just society's fucking run amok. And I'm not going to sit here and tolerate it. So
No, you're the last defense
I'm the only
between
defense that
us
we
and
have.
chaos.
It starts with the planes.
Yeah, it starts
Really
with the
And
planes.
it ends with the end of the world.
Yeah, it does. It ends with the rapture.
there's no middle ground either. Just if we let go of the planes,
That's
it's the
the
end of the
end.
world.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it.
See, you gotta go from the diaphragm out and be so boisterous that it reverberates off all the walls.
don't have
in the
that
theater.
in me.
I do it all the time.
You're so good at it.
All right, so I'm curious about one thing because you wrote Manhunt, and
How do you get from this weird adventure game nobody's ever heard of in Italy all the way to
Yeah.
Manhunt?
Yeah, because Manhunt.
I co-wrote Manhunt, but yeah.
Oh, okay, co-wrote Manhunt.
I co-wrote it.
So we want to give credit to your co-writer as well. But this game, I remember very clearly playing Manhunt. I was in college. I played it with my friend Brandon. It's still, considering the complete volume of games that we've played, it's still one of the darkest and weirdest and most unique games I've ever played, I think,
Yeah,
from a storytelling
agreed.
perspective.
No, I'm sorry. I
That's a
apologize.
compliment,
Was it
right?
the one where
Yeah,
you were
it's a-
in?
Okay.
It's a great album, yeah.
Was that the one where you were in the prison or no? Which one was Manhunt?
It was like a snuff film, basically. Where
Yes.
like,
Okay.
You're in
And
the streets of this abandoned city.
Okay.
So I'm curious, like, I'm curious specifically what it was like to write a game like that, because that game was a big deal when it came out. Not only critically and commercially, but it was a big deal because it was fucking really violent. And at that time, we're still not accustomed. I mean, there's still problems with people with violence with games, but that was really a unique game where it was like you are a serial killer and you're using plastic bags and all sorts of shit to just kill people. So what was it like to kind of write that? I mean, was that like a little weird for you?
It was fun. It was good.
I mean, I thought it was fun.
We gotta hang out more.
Yeah.
I don't think we set out with the idea of getting banned in a couple of countries and doing the most violent game out there, but certainly the idea, and it goes all the way back to conversations that I had with Sam Houser and Leslie Benzies, who was the producer over at Rockstar North in Scotland, and Dan Houser. It was always, let's make a horror game. And Sam was very particular about wanting to make a horror game that didn't have any zombies, didn't have any monsters, vampires, none of that stuff. It just wanted to make a very grounded, very scary game and a very scary story. And I remember thinking, what are we gonna do? how do we do this? And then having conversations with the guys at Rockstar North, and a couple of the very creative people that were working with me very early on the game was Adam Davidson, who was the concept artist, a brilliant mind and a brilliant illustrator, very sort of Frank Miller-esque in his approach to drawing and visualizing, and James Worrell, the co-writer of the story, and we were talking about things, and this idea of like a Clockwork Orange, and how scary that movie can be, but how scary it must be to also be the drunkard, the bum that gets beaten to death by those hoodlums in that shot under the overpass, and kind of thinking, well, if you were in your pajamas, unleashed in a situation like that with gangs after you, that would be pretty scary. And kind of it started from there. It started from a place of how can we take something that's very grounded and very real and really kind of make it affect people. And then, of course, we kind of took it to the extreme level.
Yeah, you sure did. I mean, I love that. I don't know if
that was the thing. Where, I mean, like you're saying, you didn't set off with the objective of getting banned in countries, but was there ever the conversation of is this going too far? Kids are going to play this. We're going to play right into Jack Thompson's hand.
There was never. It's never intended to be, given to kids or marketed to kids, and Rockstar is very responsible about that. So it wasn't as much as kids are going to play this, but it's more like we need to keep it. We can only go as far as where it contributes to the story, to the atmosphere, to the world that we're creating, and it's never gratuitous. We were looking at video nasties from the 80s and that sort of atmosphere and that vibe and that sort of grindcore sort of look. But we never wanted to do the slasher film for the sake of having the blood flow.
Sure.
It was just for a stylistic impression of the story that we were trying to tell.
Gotcha.
And yeah, you don't go out there and say, maybe New Zealand is going to ban the game. You just go there and say, I hope that people that play this game see that we're trying to do something a little more than just, putting a piece of software into a box and kind of having people go and buy it. But we're actually trying to affect them. And we were trying to affect them in a more visceral way.
So I still feel like we're bearing the lead here. How do you get to Rockstar? Like, how do you get, and like, you know what I mean? You're over here. You're in this pasta village. That's all you know how to make.
It was a village made of pasta.
Yeah,
exactly.
You're growing the pasta in the fields.
Believe it or not, Greg, that was racist.
Really?
I want you to know. Yeah, I don't think you can call. I mean, I'm Italian myself.
How many times have you said "Mamma Mia"?
Never. He's probably never uttered
He just
those
gets
words.
up and leaves. Turns the camera over.
Every time I want to say it, I just stab myself in the leg. I
hate Mario. You
I have a
hate
blade
Mario.
here. Yeah.
But
Mario
no.
is my second name.
Is it really?
No.
That was racist. No, just
But no, you go from working on this adventure game where your friends just needed a story or whatever, but then how do you get to Rockstar? And when you get there, do you realize what they're onto, like what Rockstar's becoming?
Well, I was after getting into the industry, I kind of got hooked into the sort of the writing and the creative process of making video games. And I knew very little going in. I was more of a film guy. I'm really not a very technical programmer type of person. But I kind of saw the potential of the medium, and I thought, possibly stupidly, that games are going to be for a director in the new millennium what commercials were in the 70s and music videos in the 80s and 90s. Sort of like a portal, a launch pad, a way to go make movies, because making movies is not the easiest job to get. You don't go and look on Craigslist. Oh, director, the one I want, I'm going to go and send my resume. So that was my idea to get in. And then as I started working on it, I actually started really appreciating the medium for what it was, and being really interested, and kind of putting my passion for movies aside and wanting to do more video games.
Gotcha.
So, I was lured into it for one reason, and then I fell in love with it. And so when the game was over, it was a one-stop gig. I started looking for another job, and I ended up working for Ubisoft for a little bit. And Ubisoft had a studio in Milan, so that was convenient. So I was working there for a bit, and then I moved to Paris for a bit to work with them over there. And then I just figured out that the games that I was working on at the time, and again, this was, I think, if I remember correctly, Splinter Cell was just coming out at the time. So, like, the Canada studios were just opening. It was like the prehistory of the world.
Of the Ubisoft,
Ubisoft was fighting dinosaurs in Canada. So I was like, okay, the games I was doing were great, but I've always been like a little darker and a little, edgier in the work I do. And while I was having a great time, and I was learning a lot about gameplay, people there like Sarah Jascoer, who's now their head of creative thinking, whatever, wonderful person that gave me my first real job in games. He taught me about gameplay, and he taught me about making games and what it means to kind of build a level, and made me build levels and that sort of stuff. And I had no idea.
You're like, I just want to write.
No, you build a level for Rayman. Okay. And then, so I was working on fun games, but it wasn't necessarily my calling.
Exactly.
And so I was looking for companies that were doing games and were a little more experimental and were a little more like in the world that I liked. And I remember playing this game called Grand Theft Auto, and it was a top-down kind of little racing game where you would also get out of the car and shoot people. And I was playing it when I was working on my first game, my first adventure game, and the programmer was obsessed about it, and he had me play it, and I was like, oh my God, this is genius. Like, you can do all these things, and it's like a top-down version of Scarface. So it was great and very simple. And I heard that the same company, DMA Design, was working on a new version, supposedly a 3D version. And so I remember that when I went and looked online and people were talking about that game, there was a lot of concern and a lot of like, is it going to be good? Is it going to be bad? They'll never be able to do it.
Yeah.
I remember a lot of people saying they will never be able to do it in 3D, in a city. Oh, come on. And so I sent them my resume, and I got an interview with DMA Design. And I went there and I interviewed, and I don't know how it went, but at some point somebody asked me, so why do you want to come work here? And back at the time, they were in Scotland, in a district of Edinburgh called Leith. Leith is not like the best place to be. I think it's like where Train Spotting is set.
Okay, great. That's great.
Yeah.
It's a good
So it was a very
visual
safe,
reference for me.
yeah, right? So why do you want to work here? And I remember telling them, because you guys have the balls to make games that nobody else will make. And I think the guy in front of me said, you're hired.
That's awesome.
Like right there.
Right.
And then I was hired, and then I ended up working, a little bit on everything that was being cooked up at the time. Manhunt ended up being my main job over there, simply because they were putting the team together. And I was good at writing. I was good with camera work, and it was a very visual game, so I gravitated toward that. But I also worked a little bit on GTA 3, and I was there when they were putting it all together, and very exciting times. And I remember working a little bit and even doing some voiceover for that game. Some of the Italian pedestrians, imagine why, ended up being me. And then, that game came out and turned out to be good. And
to say the least. So, I mean, because that's when you got, what you're talking about is everybody saying they wouldn't be able to do it. That was me. I will never, ever forget getting that EGM, opening it up, and they had the first screenshot of guy in a leather jacket in the 3D world, and it said GTA 3. And I was such a GTA 2 fan. I remember looking at that and reading this, and they're like, it's going to be open world, and you can do whatever you want. And it's just like the other game, but it's in 3D, and you're like, that's no way. That's impossible. There's no way a game can do that. So I like that you, where I just blew him off, you were like, I'll go work for him.
I saw that, and I remember those early videos and screenshots, and you would see the leaves that would blow and the trash, and it looked so alive. And I remember I was working there for a bit and playing the game a lot, and it was a very collaborative environment. I just remember walking out of the office and walking into the parking lot with a few of the other guys and thinking, am I going to get that car or that car? I mean, you literally walked out of the game and into the real world, and you kept thinking about the game and the potential of the game. And so that was great. And working on Manhunt was equally great because they were very supportive, and you could really see that the roots of GTA and the roots of Manhunt are into just a genuine desire to create video games that were for an audience, and for an audience that loved the games, but also they wanted more out of games. It's easy to forget that before GTA 3 and before a lot of what Rockstar did, games were still kind of in their infancy a little bit in terms of how the medium was perceived and the stories and the subject matter that they could treat. And after GTA, and I'm going to say Manhunt, even if I'm just throwing it in there because I'm sitting here at this table, but it was like a watershed moment where all of a sudden games had a completely different credibility, and I think that Rockstar has a lot to
100%.
Deserves a lot because of that. And after that, you would watch ER, and the doctors had the Rockstar logo on their lockers, so it was like it became a thing, and it was good to be there.
Well, and that's what's, I guess, the most fascinating talking about, your time there in particular is the fact that you get there as the rock star I think everybody knows now is born, right? I mean, GTA 3 is the coming out party.
My contract that I've kept still says DMA design.
Right,
and
right,
there's
right,
a little
right.
guy made of a D, an M, and an A. Which is also great because DMA Design was a great company that has a great history. They made Lemmings, which I played when I was a kid, and Body Harvest, and Space Station Silicon Valley. And then it became Rockstar North.
Right.
And now everybody knows them for the blue Rockstar logo.
Yeah, I'm curious, because of your heritage there at that kind of embryonic state with 3 and then with Manhunt and then San Andreas, and then you get to work on something like Red Dead as well, which is an exceptional game, and a lot of people think actually maybe their best game.
Because of you.
Because of you.
Of course, I take complete credit for the entire game.
I heard there was a meeting at some point where you're like, let's put horses in this game. And they're like, great, cowboy game with horses.
Up until that point, they had motorcycles,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
It was
genius.
Yeah, it was motorcycles and cars.
I'm curious. I'm curious if you felt like that. It's kind of validating for you because it's not only by the time Red Dead comes around, the expectations of Rockstar just generally as an entity, not even just a Rockstar North, is through the roof. And yet they just keep going back to you to write more and more stuff, and that must have felt pretty validating for you, because at that point you probably could have written your ticket and gone anywhere at that, with something like GTA or Manhunt on your resume. So was that kind of cool for you?
Well, it was. First of all, it was a great place to work. So I don't think that you didn't just stay there and get the credits and then go, oh, I could go everywhere. I mean, it was just great working there.
Also, they were sort of at the top of the game. They're sort of at the top of the game. So it's like,
but actually, it's interesting because the genesis of my move to San Diego to work on Red Dead was actually driven by me having a sort of like moment of questioning my future and deciding whether the time had come for me to go back to my original passion, which was film, or continue to stay in game. And it was literally like, it felt a little bit like Luke in Star Wars going and saying, "Hey, Uncle, can I go to the academy?" And Uncle saying, "No, you need to stay for another harvest." I literally went and talked to my uncle at the time, which was Leslie Benzies, the producer.
Was he on Tatooine? Or?
It was, yeah. We had moved office to Tatooine. I went to talk to the producer of GTA, Leslie Benzies, who was, also a personal friend and like a wonderful human being. And I just didn't know what to do. I was kind of like a little lost. In a way, I was finding some creative success in what I was doing. Manhunt, I wrote the sequel to Manhunt, but then that was given to another studio. I was working on internal projects at Rockstar that, even if they never saw the light of day, were very exciting and I can't talk about, but it was a great place to be creatively for me. And because I was so fueled by all these ideas, there was a part of me that was like, what are you doing? Shouldn't you just didn't just get this whole thing started because you wanted to make films? And so at the time I just really didn't know. And this was 2004, late 2004. And so I had a conversation, like a very good conversation. And basically Leslie told me, why don't you wait and, do something new, do another bigger game, maybe move. We have so many other studios. Move somewhere, and just you're obviously passionate about what you do, and you shouldn't just take this decision lightly. Just look around, see if there's anything that you like, and if you do, come talk to me. And so I started looking at different things that Rockstar was doing, just to see if I could maybe get a change of scenery. I was thinking of going to London, be closer to like the movie industry over there, so I could work on games over there and work on movies, maybe, hang out with the people who make them, or go and make cups of tea at the production company and, see if I could slide a script under the door somewhere. I started looking at New York, where the headquarters of Rockstar are, and then San Diego popped up. And San Diego was in the very early days of the sequel to Red Dead Revolver. And that was going to be like an open world game. And it was called the Old West Project. Very good name.
It's a great code name.
No
one could ever possibly figure out what
the Old West Project. And, I remember just seeing a video, an internal video of the technology that the guys were building that eventually became like the Rage engine and the landscape. And it was just mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Just mind-boggling, the rendering distance, where in GTA at times you have to put buildings in the way so that, the cities can stream. These guys were just opening it up, and it was like desert and countryside and grass and cloth and rope, and it was like amazing. And then, not second to that, the fact that it was an opportunity to move to the United States. And that also seemed appealing to me because it was like hitting the big reset button. And I had done it before once. I went from basically Italy and a little bit of France to Scotland.
Sure.
And that was really good for my life, creatively, and a good challenge. So I figured that's it. That's what I need to do. I need to kind of go over there and get involved with that game. And when I got to San Diego, there was a very, very small team. It was like a skeleton crew. I don't want to say numbers because I could remember it wrong, but maybe there was 15 people working on the game.
Damn.
And, and it was programmers that were like working on it, but also working on like the core technology. And I remember that as I joined the team, some really brilliant people got pulled in to work on it as well and became kind of like they were building the leadership structure. So Ted Carson became the technical director of the game. And Ted is just a brilliant mind. And Darren Bader was the art director. And Darren Bader illustrated like Magic the Gathering cards and covers for like Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, the guy is a painter, and is a wonderful painter. And he would like take screen grabs of the game and paint over them. And this is how it looks like. And you go, ah. So they were putting together these people, and I met them, and I just felt the home right away. And so I think 2 or 3 months later, I was in San Diego, and I was thinking, I'm going to work for a couple of years in this game, and then, you know, maybe whatever happens, happens. Then I'll make a couple of short films, and I'll go maybe shoot a movie. The game took 4.5 years to make.
But was the idea of moving San Diego to get you closer to LA?
Part of it, definitely. Yeah. There was definitely part of it that was like, I'm gonna be closer. I'm gonna be closer to LA, whatever happens. But that kind of quickly went away when the potential of what the game could be sort of became apparent. And at the beginning, it wasn't very apparent. It was more like a question of really getting that core team together. And when Ted and myself and Darren and you know, a few of the other guys kind of really kind of came together and started seeing it, that's when Sam started seeing it and Dan started seeing it, and that's when things got really exciting.
And so is that when you knew that this was going to be something like...
I never knew that I never knew that Red Dead was going to be a success, but honestly, you never do.
Yeah. And
I think I had a bet with some of the guys over there that we would sell less than 2 million copies. I have lost that bet.
Yeah.
Hopefully it wasn't for too much money.
It wasn't, luckily.
Was there, I mean, again, you're there from, I mean, basically as Rockstar becomes the golden boy of Rockstar, like, was there mounting pressure? I mean, like, you make it sound so easy, where they're like, go to another studio. No big deal. You know what I mean? Like, was it like that, or is there, like, intense pressure every day? Like, we have to be better than last time.
Sure, you have pressure.
Yeah.
You try, you know, also I wasn't running the studio.
Sure.
I was, you know, on the creative leadership of one game, and then there's like people that are actually, you know, taking care of the day-to-day lights and everything and hiring people. But anyway, sure, there is pressure. There's pressure all the time. But you try not to think about that, and you try to kind of stay focused on what you're doing. And really just have a, you know, there's a lot of talk about like having a vision, or people need to have a vision, and it's all very pretentious and very abstract and sometimes very wrong. But what I think at the bottom of that, there is, first of all, a need to kind of see a light at the end of the tunnel and kind of being able to say, that's where we're going. And to keep the tunnel analogy, I also feel like sometimes you're the one with the torch, and you're like, and I've got the torch. Let's go over there because I think that we're going to be safe over there. And people end up following you because you're the one with the light.
Sure.
And eventually you get out. So it kind of, sometimes it gets like that. And I feel like that's when you feel the pressure. You feel the pressure also because the game is very expensive. I'm not going to get into money talk here. Sure. But clearly it wasn't a low budget indie game. So you also have people, you know, calling you in the middle of the night saying, by the way, is this ever going to be done?
Yeah.
But also to the credit of Rockstar and the way they do things, there was always just a desire for quality and to kind of raise the bar. And somebody like Sam will not settle for anything less than the greatest. So if you keep giving him good ideas and a vague promise that they can be done, then they have to be done, and they have to be done great.
Yeah.
So in a way, sometimes if I wanted something to be done, all I needed to do was really just pitch him something and make sure that it was creatively rewarding, and then I would have the support to put it in the game.
Gotcha. And so then, as, you know, writer of Red Dead, what does that look like when you're going through the tunnel? Do you sit down and you guys just make the outline of what the main story arc's going to be and how John's life's going to go, and then is day-to-day trying to think up quests and side quests and how this character interacts? Or
Sure. It's, for a game like Red Dead, it was also like a big team, and, you know, Dan Houser was heavily involved on it. Mike Hunsworth, you know, the other people writing the game were all kind of contributing pages and storylines and dialogue and scenes. But fundamentally, what you do when you're stringing it all together is really trying to have, you sort of have three different threads in your head, and on one you have like the characters of the game that you want to. Great stories come out of great characters, and so the focus at the beginning and throughout it is always like how do we create great characters that players will want to spend time with, and will motivate you to do stuff. And then you have the environment, which is basically, especially in games, like a great tool to tell the story. You can tell a lot of the story in the way you're building the environment and shaping it and the things that happen in the environment. And then, of course, you have like the game part. You have like the toys you're playing with and the character that you control. And that also kind of contributes to the narrative in a pretty major way. So you have ideas, and everybody in the team has ideas of like, we want to have horses, wild horses, cows, herding, ropes, lassos, wanted posters. So there's all these ideas that are coming up, and then you have these threads, and you're trying to wave together like a tapestry, right? And that becomes the job. The job becomes waving it all together.
Gotcha. Fascinating.
Yeah, it's good stuff. I mean, I guess what I'm curious about now is kind of having really helped pioneer maybe the new generation of writers and writing in games, starting with your work at Rockstar and all this. Do you look around the industry now, and what games kind of impress you from a writing standpoint? I mean, my mind always goes back to something like BioShock or some role-playing games. I think like New Vegas was extremely well written. What are some of the like standouts to you from your peers?
Well, there's a lot of like great writing in games, and there's also great experimentation going on in the indie scene, which I think is fantastic, because that's one of the things that I always dreamed of and never anticipating happening, is a really healthy indie scene for games. It's almost healthier than in the film industry, and it says a lot. But I like games that are maybe a little more linear for just looking at the story. Something like The Last of Us, for me, for example, was like fantastic. Just the way the story was told, the characters, which again, I'll keep saying that, but for me, the characters are everything. Yep. So just the way they put it together was phenomenal. And yeah, I'm a big fan of Fallout, all the Fallout games, and I've pre-ordered Fallout 4 already.
Did you get the Pip-Boy edition?
I didn't. I'm sorry.
Nerd.
I can't wait for you to have that on for the first 2 weeks until it eventually gives you a rash, and then you have to throw it out the window. I'm not going to take it off. What's going to happen is eventually it's going to wind up at Kevin's house, and then his girlfriend's going to get pissed at us for letting him have it. That's not going to happen. So is there a huge divide in your approach to writing something like a screenplay versus a game? And I know I've asked that question a lot of people, but what I mean is do you diverge greatly from that 3-act structure, or does that still sort of at the core of any story that you try to tell? Because in certain instances, you're going well beyond the 2-hour storytelling of a movie into maybe a 20 or potentially 40 or potentially, if you're talking Fallout, like 60-hour experience. How do you wrap your head around that, and like where does that even start?
Those are like 6 questions to wrap.
Sorry, I mean, like
no, it's fine. Yeah. I mean, we've got all day. Well, I can start by saying that clearly writing a movie and writing a game are different. Different jobs and different beasts, but in the same way that writing a comic book and writing a movie are different, and people seem to think that a comic book is a storyboard for a movie, but actually it isn't. And writing television is different than writing a movie. So I feel like every medium is unique in itself, and you need to kind of learn the strengths and avoid the weaknesses. So there's also commonalities. Games and movies are visual. First of all, they're visual media. Movies have more in common. Have more in common with games than people would expect. I see a more direct parallel between movies and games than games and theater, for example. So there's that, and there's elements that you can bring from games to movies, like characters, environment, world building. Having to show rather than rely on the thoughts of a character. All those things migrate pretty seamlessly.
Right.
And the concept of interactivity, which it's a big word that sometimes we're still figuring out how that affects storytelling. That clearly doesn't apply, but still, that doesn't mean that movies are not interactive. They're just interactive in a different way, like books are interactive in a different way. And I don't mean that books are interactive because you flip the pages. I mean that, you have an element of introspection and building in your head that, happens differently in film than it happens in a game. In a game, maybe you have more agency, and in film, you have a little more time to kind of intellectualize some of that agency. It's the classic example. In a movie, you're trying to second guess the killer. In the game, you're actually going after him physically, but you're participating.
Right.
If you weren't participating in a movie, you would get bored and you would be texting, and then Colin would be shouting at you. So, right?
Yeah. That's about right. Yeah, Nelson.
So, in terms of like the 3-act structure, that's like a really big conversation for. A lecture more than an interview, but basically, there's people in film that will tell you, I don't follow the 3-act structure. What are you talking about? And I'll tell you that Red Dead followed the 3-act structure to the point that the environment was divided in 3 because we wanted to have a first act in the frontier, a second act in Mexico, and a third act with a resolution and an epilogue in West Elizabeth, what we called the North back in the day. So, you can literally, there's different ways to skin the cat, but I guess what you want is structure. Fundamentally, you can use, Aristotelian poetics or the 3-act structure or Sid Field, whatever you want, as long as you kind of have a plan for putting it all together. And if the 3-act structure works for you, then ultimately the goal is to keep it invisible,
right?
And just tell a good story. But every story has a beginning, a middle, and the end, and that's the 3-act structure.
So, I know we're going long on this topic. I do want to segue over to sort of.
I brought him here to talk about stuff like this.
Yeah, and
so
I feel like
Okay.
we can just split this into 2, so that's totally fine.
So so then the question is, when you're writing a screenplay, right? You can take a look at your sort of dramatic beats per scene, and you can tell when I guess I would assume it would be easier to tell if a scene's working better in a movie than you're going after a certain emotion that you're trying to evoke with that scene or with those characters than it is in a game, because you're not necessarily in control of the pacing of how that's going to be given to the audience. How do you rectify that? How do you know that? Or I guess it's just trial and error, because I guess with a game you can go back and kind of fix moments. But how, as a writer, do you go, okay, this is going to hit, this is going to have an emotional impact? And you mentioned The Last of Us, and obviously these guys won't shut up about it. I've never played it because I didn't have a PS3. But
now what's your excuse? You got a PS4.
I got no excuse now, so eventually I will pay. But how do you know? I mean, is it the same? And you've now written, obviously, I'm assuming, more than one screenplay. You don't. I'm guessing you didn't come out of the gate being like, this is the first screenplay I ever wrote. Let's go make it into a movie.
Yeah, that was it. Ego made, and no.
So obviously you have experience with that, but when you're writing the game, is that the same feeling of I just wrote this cool thing and I think it's going to get this emotion across, and then it happens, or is there a lot more trial and error to that?
Well, first of all, don't think that the screenplay, for a minute, don't think that the screenplay is the movie, because it's not.
Right.
The screenplay is a map, and then there's the road, and that's it. So the screenplay is not the movie in the same way that the screenplay for the story in a game is not the game, or the game design document is not the game. At the end of the day, these are just tools. The only time when something that's on the paper stays on paper is the novel. is the short story.
Right.
That's when the destination matches the instrument that's been created on, and so they are one-to-one. You write a book and you read a book.
Mm-hmm.
But when you write a screenplay, the screenplay is not the movie. The screenplay is one of many steps and building blocks that go into making the movie. So actually, making the movie requires a screenplay, it requires actors, it requires sets, it requires so many sound and music that is not even in the screenplay. And yet, sound and music are like so important to a film, and even to a game. Something like Manhunt, it really came together when Craig Connor and his team started putting in the score and the sound effects. It went from this is kind of scary to this is incredibly terrifying, and it sounds horrible. So but that stuff is not even on the page. So I guess my way to answer that is that you don't know it until you do it.
Right.
You don't know if a game mechanic is going to work until you build it. You don't know if a story beat in a game cutscene is going to work until you, at the very least, either prevising it or shooting it on a performance capture stage and then going, that's not working. Do we have the writer here, or do we make it up? And in a movie, it happens on set. It's a big surprise, maybe, but the actors bring so much to the process. The environment brings so much, and the director and everybody else brings so much. That at the end of the day, you write it, step one. You shoot it, so you rewrite it that way, and then you edit it, you rewrite it that way. So what you get at the end is really a process of different iterations. And I feel like iterating is really key to a lot of art. Painting, sculpture, games, movies. You kind of put it out there and you look at it and you go, I need a little more over here. I need to sculpt the nose a little better. And it's the same whether you're building the horse, sculpting, the David, or making a movie. You just do it. You put it out there. Take a step back. You look at it, and then you go, I need to work on the nose a little better.
This might be a good segue into the film, because I'm curious about this, being that you kind of exist in both worlds. You exist in the kind of the gaming realm and then the realm of film.
This sounds so sci-fi.
It is.
He exists in both worlds.
It is.
Christian Cantamessa.
It is. It's Stargate. Is there? And I'm curious about this, and I'm not asking. Not that I would know any names anyway, but is there a pretension in film, now that you kind of made your first film, about people that work on games? In other words, is there? If you tell like a film writer or someone who works on film, like, oh, I wrote Red Dead, I wrote these games. Do they? Is that something that's taken very seriously in the film industry, or is there some sort of like that's not art?
That's
those
cute.
Aren't, yeah,
that's cute. Glad
we
you came up
make
here to play
you
with us
make
big
games,
dogs.
but we make films. And is there anything like that, or is there kind of an understanding of how important storytelling is in games now and how progressive it is?
So, I've been in the industry for a while, and I can tell you that at the beginning, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, maybe even a little more, the attitude sometimes was like that, sometimes. Now, it's absolutely not. Right now, every meeting I have and every person I talk to, at the very least, there is a sense of interest and respect for a form of entertainment, and sometimes an art form that is different. It's nascent, is not even nascent, is now in its growing up pains, but very, very interesting at the least. And a lot of people in Hollywood are just gamers. There's just a lot of people that I go meet, and they're like, "Big Red, you worked on a Red Dead? Oh my god!" And it's great because maybe they did like a big movie, and I'm like, "You made that movie? Oh my god!" And then it becomes like a mutual admiration society. But I feel like it's not predominant anymore. There's a lot of new executives. There's a lot of people paying attention, and in general, I feel like it's better. if not straight good. That said, I feel like games should sometimes I see that in games, as ridiculous as it sounds, but sometimes I feel like the television industry and the movie industry are this sort of like slightly more open industries to other people's ideas and collaborations and cross-pollination. And sometimes I feel games are the one industry that's becoming a bit of a citadel that is like, oh, you're not a game designer with 25 years of experience. You have no place in this company. And that's why I'm so happy about the indie scene, because I feel like a lot of these great ideas are going in there because sometimes the more, AAA established industry is just entrenched in the way they're doing things. And if we look at the history of cinema, that happened to film as well. Like the studio system in the 40s and the 30s and 40s and 50s made great films. Casablanca. Boom. But at the same time, it was a citadel. It was very insular. It was impossible to get in, and eventually was its own downfall. And maybe we're kind of bypassing that because there was no indie scene. So we're maybe bypassing that in games by being smart and doing things that way. And I hope so, because nobody wants the sort of creative stuck in a rut situation.
So now you bring up stuck in a rut. And so, like, my question for you then, you finish Red Dead. You got your...
It's 60 hours of gameplay.
Yeah. That's how long it took to make, right?
Yeah.
You finish off Red Dead, and, like, that was kind of like they wanted you to get one more year on the moisture farm. So then, like, for you finish that game, and is it you wanted to go work on another game, which becomes something like Shadow of Mordor? Or it was that you wanted to go make movies?
No, after Red Dead, I left the company, and, I had a desire to kind of change a little bit and do something different. So I didn't do games for a bit.
Okay.
I mean, Red Dead came out in 2011, and Shadow of Mordor came out last year.
Yeah.
So there was a gap.
Were you quizzing
there.
us there? I didn't.
Yeah. And no, I have very bad memory for these things. But and in the meantime, I did some game writing here and there, and I some freelancing here and there. But I fundamentally just focused on film, and I did a bunch of short films, and some were really terrible, and I've buried them with ET in a ditch somewhere.
I can't wait for the documentary in 20 years digging them out.
Hopefully I'll be gone by then.
Jeez.
Well, whenever they dig them up, and some of them did better, and one it's the one that kind of got me a little more traction, and between my work in games and my work with these short films, I got an agent and a manager and all that sort of like interesting stuff. And then I wrote Air with Chris Passetto, whom I met working on Red Dead Redemption.
Oh.
It was
back to Red Dead.
He was a designer on the game, and he was another movie buff and really into sort of writing and making little movies. So I co-wrote a short film with him, how I survived the zombie apocalypse, and we were really happy with the way it turned out. As happy as you can be with like a 10-minute short film that is, it is what it is, made for no money. But we kind of enjoyed the collaboration and making movies, and we wrote Air. We literally wrote the short film, and then we said, how is it going to be like to write something a little bigger, but still kind of contained and still character-driven? And How I Survived the Zombie Apocalypse is a mother and son in the zombie apocalypse, and that movie came out in 2001. So it's like The Last of Us 3. We didn't even look at that.
Don't worry. Neil Druckmann ripped you off. I understand.
It's a completely different story, but
Druckmann again.
But completely different. But it was like, okay, that was a mother and son, so it's a family.
Sure.
And then we thought, let's do something with like two best friends.
Okay.
Two sort of.
Hold on, don't be stepping on air yet.
Let's
because
not
this
step.
topic, we're in topic 2. which is game versus movies. And we're wrapping it up here since you have it both. But so I want to
Oh,
know.
you guys have a plan?
Oh, I've changed it on the go because that's how
one
good I
word
am.
for it.
Yeah.
Well, the garbage truck is on fire and rolls down the street, and you just kind of
Our blueprints are like an
counteract it.
etch-a-sketch where they just get shaken a
Yeah.
bunch of times and it just becomes a fucking collage and nothing.
So then wrapping this up, the topic 3 is going to be Air, all about it. So you're working on Air, but then you start working on Shadows of Mordor as well, which is interesting because it's set in the movie universe. It's like you're back to making now a movie game that is a game that's just in the, you know what I mean? Like what pulled you back in? You were out, you were making your movies.
I wasn't making Air at the time. Making a movie is
Easy, we make them every day. We're going to have this up
exactly
in no
like
time.
that. You put that over there.
we
Well,
don't even have a guy behind the camera. The door is our cameraman right now. Hi, door.
it's very slim.
Yeah.
Very slim cameraman. I think that the lead time from writing a script to actually getting the script made, assuming that it gets made,
Yeah.
which is a big assumption, is at the very least 3 to 5 years.
Good Lord.
So, and if you're a first-time filmmaker, I mean, if you're Quentin Tarantino, it potentially
Sure.
is much less. But if you're a first-time filmmaker, that could be 10, it could be never, it could be, I don't know.
Yeah.
So we wrote Air, Chris and I wrote Air in 2010.
Oh, wow, okay.
And then we kept, so that was the first draft. And then we kept, so that was while we were still working on Red Dead.
Sure.
And then we kept kind of putting it away, put in a drawer. Let's finish. I have to finish the game.
Yeah.
It's kind of taking a lot of time of my life to do that. And then, we want to, rewrite it. And then somebody reads it. And I didn't have a presentation at the time. So it was like, what do we do with this? Maybe we're just going to, shoot it ourselves. So we wrote it really small.
Yeah.
That we could shoot it in this place.
You're welcome to use this place anytime.
I wanted to.
Thank you.
You can have
And
Kevin
then-
too if you need to.
Yeah, he's gonna be one of the guys.
Yeah.
And then I'm doing a version with 5 people. And then
That's
and
our
then,
life. If you watch this movie in many ways, shapes, or forms, it mirrors our life in that one day, Greg.
It does not.
If I ever get trapped in a room with you.
Maybe I should leave now.
It's not even topic 3 yet.
Right, fine.
Jesus
Christ.
You're the one pushing my button.
So the idea was to write it, was always to
Really
write it to
small.
shoot it.
Yeah, it was to write it really small.
Had it
and
crossed
shoot
your
it in
mind
a
to say,
big-
like, maybe we should try to take this to a couple production companies and see if they just want to buy it outright from us? Or was it always
No.
going to be a vehicle for you to kind of propel yourself forward as a director?
It was for me to direct and to be fair with Chris and to be. I'm hugely grateful to Chris because we had several opportunities to sell the script to like legitimate production companies that I can't name, but that have big directors and
Sure.
And I was always like, Chris, I would like to make this film, and he always supported me. He always said, no, let's not just make money. Let's try and make the movie.
Yeah.
Which, for a friend is something valuable that, I respect and I'll be thankful because he always chose the let's make it avenue as opposed to let's make a quick buck.
Do you feel like that was because, taking a step back to your earlier comment, you had sort of been chasing the dream of film and on some level had put that aside to then go work on the surefire, like let's make money at Rockstar, or
I never worked at Rockstar to make money. I worked at Rockstar because for a very, very long time I was, and in part I still am, hugely in love with video games.
Gotcha.
And that's still something that I am very, very passionate to this day. I feel like it comes a time in your life where you just want to do something different because you've been doing
Sure.
something for so long that you're a creative person. And, if you're painting, sometimes you're like, I can't paint anymore. I need to try something different.
Right.
And then maybe that something different just leads you back to painting, or maybe it leads you somewhere off completely. And you
Gotcha.
guys have changed.
Sure.
You guys felt
Oh, we
the
know the
need to
feeling.
change.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
We
that's
sympathize.
that's what motivated me. It was never
Interesting.
the money. The money is actually, and for a lot of people in a lot of industries, and especially people that work on low budget filmmaking like Air, money is really never the motivating factor.
Right.
Because if money was the factor, we wouldn't have Norman Reedus, we wouldn't have Manhunt, so we couldn't afford stars of that caliber and of that talent and the money they command in the studio system. They did this movie because they really liked it. And I feel like sometimes you have to reason that way. So basically what I was saying is that we decided not to sell the script because we really liked it and wanted to kind of do it ourselves. And then when I ended up having an agent and a manager and a lawyer and all these nice people, then they are very nice. I'm not kidding.
That's not just a platitude.
It kind of grew. And so we're like in 2012, we're in 2012, and nobody really has seen the script that could make it, aside from the people that now represent us and are saying, you know, this is two guys in a garage. It's great, but it's not gonna work, and you're not giving enough credit to your story. We need to kind of grow it a little bit and put a little more, you know, meat on that bones, and make it maybe less of a play and more of a movie. And so you're working on it, and eventually you get it to the point where it can go and be read by people. And then when it goes and gets read to people, that takes a long time. It takes a long time because these people have a lot to read, are making movies, and when they read it, they kind of go, this would have been great last year, but now we made this other movie that is kind of science fiction, so we're not going to make another one.
Sure.
And so on and so forth. And it's kind of like that scene in 2001: A Space Odyssey where all the planets need to align to the monolith. And sometimes that doesn't happen. And for Air, that did happen when the script and I believe my short first, it's just very confusing, but I believe my short first landed on Robert Kirkman's desk at the time when I was changing representation, one of these things where people come and go in the industry. And my short film landed on his desk. The script landed on his desk, and his business partner, David Alpert, who's also producer on The Walking Dead, and David was kind of like, I don't really think we need to see a zombie short film. I think we kind of got the zombies down. And then for some bizarre reason, they clicked and they linked and they watched it and they liked it. And they were like, oh, is there a script? And the script was not about zombies. It was Air.
Yeah.
And they read it and they liked it. And, you know, when Robert and David Alpert like something and you have a meeting with them and they kind of like you, then, you know, things start moving.
You finally get traction on this idea that you've been pushing for years and years and kicking around and doing all this different stuff. Yeah. So now we've moved into the Air topic. I want you to know that. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching this on Patreon, Air is available Friday. You might be catching this on Thursday. So Friday, it is available. If you're watching it on YouTube, guess what, everybody? It's available right now. Go see it in theaters or download it. Now that we've caught up in the story,
when he says download it, it doesn't mean pirate it.
Don't pirate it.
He says buy it.
You know how I feel about pirating things.
Our best friends out there don't pirate things. They will support. They know.
Thank you.
Links are in the description.
Links are in the description. We all do that. We're dead set against piracy here, unless you're talking about
going
actual
after
piracy.
That booty.
I was like, you beat me to it.
Damn, I thought we were doing
it was
going to
be a walk.
Right, Call?
You nailed it.
Booty.
No,
booty.
I understand.
Booty.
It's a double entendre.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
It's a double entendre.
For the folks who are watching now, they've clicked on this to find out about how you made a movie with Norman Reedus. What is Air? What's the elevator pitch? Because in the timeline of your story right now, script's in front of DA, Robert Kirkman's looking at it. What is the script? What is Air?
So Air is a confined science fiction thriller. It's in the post-apocalyptic genre, and it's basically the story of two custodians of mankind in this underground Noah's Ark, where the best minds are kept in the hope of preserving society once the planet's surface becomes habitable again. And they wake up for 6 months. They wake up for 2 hours every 6 months to maintain the facility, and as they prepare to go back to sleep, something horrible happens. And it becomes the story of these two guys that have this huge responsibility and how they're going to cope with their problems. And are they going to be best friends or they're going to become worst enemies? and what lines are you willing to cross for your survival, and where is your survival more important than the survival of the human race? So a lot of different questions. It's a sci-fi story, it's a sci-fi genre movie, but we also like to think that it's a character piece at heart.
Sure. Well, I think that goes back to what you're talking about, right? Because you're talking about it's this when you were talking about it leading up to it that you wanted to, this could be shot. It could have been shot without a studio. It could have been shot with any backers. It could have been shot in this room because it is these two guys like 95% of the movie, right? Like that's I think one of the things I found so interesting about it is the fact that you're able to jump in and it doesn't feel like I'm trying to keep up with who all these people are from the get-go. I know who these guys are. I know the stakes, and it's just as it almost felt theatrical, like I was watching a play in a way, right? Because it is this smaller show of them interacting with each other in just relationships.
Yeah, I think one of the things that struck me by it was that it's very, very difficult to do sci-fi in general. It's incredibly difficult, and not a lot of people can actually pull doing a sci-fi indie film, largely because of the monetary demands that most sci-fi have to have in order for it to be a believable universe. But what you guys have done, and what I really respect, anyone that's out there that has studied film, you guys have taken the idea of the indie, like the one room indie, and they always say if you want to, you want to make your money stretch, you have two actors in one room, and you guys have kind of turned that on its head and turned it into a sci-fi film, which is really, really cool, and it's backed up by really strong visuals. And the thing that really struck me was the music in it, which I thought was reminiscent of, and I mean this as an actual absolute compliment because it was very nostalgic for me, kind of early Carpenter stuff, right? Nailed it, like right. I was like, this.
I'll send you a vinyl of the soundtrack.
Please do. And
we actually have them.
It hit me with such a wave of like, oh my god, it is 1985, and I'm watching Escape from New York for the first time, or I'm watching The Thing, specifically of like these people that are trapped in the situation, they can't get out of it, and they have to survive. And so that was really, really cool for me. And not only that, but you had the I don't know. I guess good fortune, and I want to get into how you sort of got Norman and Jaimin on board for this. But you had two great actors involved in it, which, as anyone else will tell you, that's the third element that you pretty much need to to tell a story with two actors is two great actors, or two characters is two great actors. So, first of all, kind of taking a step back, who shot this film for you?
The cinematographer is the director of photography is Norm Lee.
Okay,
and he's a genius cinematographer from Vancouver in Canada.
And how did you sort of get associated with him? Is he someone that you knew before?
So the way it works in film is that, a lot of filmmakers work with people they know, cinematographers or directors of photography that they've worked in the past. And me being a first-time director, that problem is solved because I've done my short films, but this movie needing to be shot in Canada and also kind of having a certain, cachet in terms of like talent involved and everything. It was important to shoot it with a certain aesthetic. And so that became like one of the criteria. I really wanted to work with somebody that could nail that sort of late 70s, early 80s look. The Thing, Alien, Escape from New York, Blade Runner. Those are the gritty, dark movies that I reference when I talk about the film. In a way, our brother in storytelling, Moon, is more like Solaris to 2001: A Space Odyssey. And we are kind of maybe the grittier, darker underbelly of that sort of filmmaking, more like The Thing, more like that sort of stuff. The John Carpenter score. And so there was a few options on the table, and I watched this film completely independently from the search for a DP called Beyond the Black Rainbow.
I've heard of that.
Oh my God, that I don't ask me about the story because I'm still trying to, it's like the Hellraiser puzzle. I'm still trying to open it, but the visuals were unbelievable.
Got it. Okay.
Unbelievable, and I was mesmerized. I think I watched it twice just because of the second time I just switched the audio off, and and then when I had like a few interviews with DPs in Canada, Norm Lee popped up, and he was the DP of Beyond the Black Rainbow, and I just wanted to meet with him. Even if he didn't work out and he wanted too much money or he was suddenly turned blind, I would still want
Bad
to
news.
meet.
I'm suddenly blind.
But you never know.
I know.
And then it turned out that he really liked the script. He was really passionate about it. He had a really, we shared a common vision for what the film would look like. And I always do a visual presentation for my movies where I just visualize it with images that I go and I filter from the internet. And a lot of people will do that with movies, and I tend to do it with photographs that I find of like real places and details of things, art. And so I showed him my collage and my collection of images that I used as reference for Air. And there was also a lot of like Cold War bunkers, and he was thinking the same thing. So I think one of the producer wrote to the rest of the producers that he had to pry us apart to end the meeting and kind of move on with the rest of the rest of the day, that we had planned. So that was love at first sight, and he ended up shooting the whole thing, of course.
And then moving forward, you found obviously someone phenomenal for the soundtrack of the film, or the actual score of the film, rather, I should say. And who is that person?
That person is Edo van Bremen, and there isn't a better name for a film composer.
I was going to say that just like,
and it's his real
when you have
name.
that name, you have to be a composer.
It's
That's
his
just the
real
way it
name,
goes.
and Edo is a musician from Canada. Super talented. He plays in a number of bands. I wish I remembered all the names, but it clearly
the Beatles,
and the Rolling Stones.
Right.
He's in both.
Maybe you've heard of either.
But people can look him up. Certainly, I think this was his first feature film. Certainly won't be his last.
No, it won't be.
And it was just a fun process because I had a pretty clear idea of the music that I wanted to have in the film, because it's the music I like, and believe it or not, the music I listen to. Not just the soundtracks, but I'm like huge into John Carpenter and like 80s electronica and sort of like 70s Pink Floyd. So that was my sound.
It's that sound that really evokes emotion. It's that sound that you just kind of close your eyes to, and imagery just starts popping through your brain, right? And it's yeah. I mean, the film, I think, aside from the strong storytelling, is actually worth it just for the soundtrack alone. If you are a huge 80s sci-fi film buff, because you will literally close your eyes and be like, I think I'm 6 years old again, and terrified of watching this thing that's going to kill this other actor on screen. So let's kind of dive into it a little bit, though. You were mentioning, we were talking out there, that you originally wanted to shoot this on film. What was the thought process behind that, and then why did you segue over to digital?
Well, first of all, as a filmmaker, there is always that sort of hidden desire to kind of shoot it with the format and with the celluloid that has been used.
Was that a
so
big
many
thing for you for your first film? Were you like, I'd have to have this as sort of a...
Well, actually, believe it or not, I shot a short in 35mm film just to acquaint myself with it. And it was fun, and it looks great, and but it was impractical even for the short film. And Kodak donated the film to me to make that short. So I didn't even have to pay for the stock. I just had to pay for the development.
Processing,
Like a wonderful company. There's a lot of wonderful companies out there that will actually help filmmakers. Seems like funny and unbelievable, and somebody that's saying it to pimp the industry, but actually there's companies out there that are really willing. If you have good ideas and you're articulate, people will try to help you make movies because they stand to gain, but also because it's an art form for a lot of people. Yeah. But to go back to your question, it was very, very, very quickly realized by everybody involved that the film wouldn't work. And it's both a question of it's becoming impractical to use film outside of certain cities where you can get it developed, or clearly we're talking about low budget indie film.
Sure.
Because if you have unlimited resources or very large
Well, even on huge studio
coffers.
films, though, that's still an issue, right? It's because we were talking out there, and you were saying that you shot the film up in Vancouver, and there wasn't even there were no facilities to actually develop the dailies for you.
Yeah, the facilities to
which I
develop
find ridiculous
film
for
are-
Vancouver,
yeah,
where everything's
are
being
going
shot.
away. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And to be fair, I don't completely remember if the facility. I think it doesn't even exist anymore, or if it did exist, it was basically working for another production, and they could only do one movie. It either doesn't exist or
They're
it's
already
very
full up.
specialty.
Yeah.
Very specialty. It's so I don't want to mislead our Canadian audience members that then will bombard us with emails saying, "No, you can go here and get
My
all the
dad
film."
runs a place that develops film.
But I remember that there was a logistical impediment to it, as well as a budgetary concern, because clearly your shooting ratio, which is how much you're shooting versus how much you're going to use, becomes much more controlled, as opposed to digital, which gives you shooting ratio flexibility.
Right.
If you can afford it with the time of the day, you can afford it with the digital cameras. With film, you need to plan for your shooting ratio, otherwise you run out of film. And
Right.
then
Or you have
somebody's
to
gonna-
switch mags right between an emotional moment. You're like, well, I just ruined
it's
this
a
take.
disaster. Yeah.
Right.
So
just for you guys, for your edification.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Where are the
you
chirons?
familiar with film?
I've
You've heard
seen
this
it
term
in
film
history
before.
books.
Yeah. So good. So yeah, I mean, so obviously it's becoming harder and harder to
Sure.
actually acquire a movie on film. And one of the things that is great about the digital medium is that obviously this is a smaller camera. It doesn't not quite as expensive as
Nope,
the
they
Red
shot the
Epic
whole
that he
movie like
shot
this.
on. But we've been going for an hour and 22 minutes, whereas traditional film magazines would only last about 10 minutes,
Oh, damn.
roughly. And so if
Jeez
you're in the middle of a
Louise.
very long scene, like your opening shot of the film is beautiful. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's one long take of Norman Reedus waking up and sort of hacking up a lung because the air mixture that he's been having forced to breathe for 6 months has been a little bit on the thin side, thanks to the nuclear holocaust. And we follow him, and even that shot, which I can just imagine you must have done more than once, would have been very expensive to do on film. So
It's a 4-minute shot.
4 minutes, yeah. So it's very cool, and it very
And
much
it's not unedited 4 minutes.
no, yeah. I mean, what I like about it is it sets the tone for what you're about to see, right? Which is like, we're here. This is where this world is going to exist. This is everything until something makes us
Something happens.
go outside of this, and that's very, very well set up. So then, where was the choice? Was it Norm's choice to shoot with the Red Epic?
Yeah, ultimately, the choice of camera has to be the DP's
Right.
choice because it's his tool.
Mm-hmm.
It was also a conversation, and there's so many good cameras out there these days that you just wanna get something that has the right look and the right feel and the right resolution. We shot anamorphic.
That was going to be my next question because it looked like it was anamorphic.
We shot anamorphic, and it's not just anamorphic, but we shot with vintage lenses.
Yeah.
To get the
set,
look
do you
and
remember?
feel. We used the ARC Vantage.
Okay.
There's only 3 sets of those lenses in the world, I believe.
I want you to know this is the nerdiest Nick's ever been on this show, and I love it. What lenses you? Oh yeah, all right.
Well, Nick went to Nick
I love
studied
it.
film, and so he's in
I
his.
love it.
he's in
That's
his-
why you
yeah.
and I are sitting back. I just want
enjoying
to
this.
No,
know
it's
this
just
is awesome.
I read a lot about this, right? Because I read
please.
the American Cinematographer magazine, and they talk a lot about how there, one of the differences between, I mean, there are stark differences between film and digital, right? And one of them is that digital is very, very, very clean look. Obviously, that's the whole point. It is the antithesis of an actual organic piece of film that is going through a shutter. And so oftentimes what DPs will do is they'll have a particular lens that adds a specific look to it that might soften the film or give it, in this case, these beautiful lens flares that will happen every once in a while because you're shooting anamorphic. And so you get the sort of, and pardon the parlance, but the John McTiernan Die Hard, like, beautiful lens flare that'll pop up every once in a while, which for sci-fi and for this world really sells that concept, and you guys were able to get a lot of that look in the camera, which was great. I'm not sure how much of it.
All of it.
It was all of it. Okay, that was going to be a question too.
There's no VFX flares of any kind.
So, like, as opposed to J.J. Abrams, where there would just be, well, actually, he did a lot of it in lens too, but then there would be a lot backed up where there's just constant flares happening all over the place, and you're like, Jesus, back the flares off, bro. I want to see Kirk's skin. So then you mentioned that you shot this in 19 days, but what's that? Hey,
No, he did. He has the whole thing about Thor's abs and.
Okay.
Chris Pine is a beautiful human being.
I'm not saying
if you're gonna put Chris Pine in a film, okay, don't cover him with lens flares. Is all I'm saying, JJ. Because J.J. Abrams really loves his podcast.
I know he's watching. His son, big Nolan North fan, so I'm sure that comes right over to Colin and Greg. And
Perfect.
Before, you want to talk about how it was shot?
Yeah,
I want to get to a specific point. We so far in the original timeline, the script was on Robert and DA's desk. They were like, "We're in. Skybound is going to be your producer on this and do all this stuff for you." The thing we keep jumping, and you said in one of the earlier ones of like, you get Norman, you get Jaimon, you get all these people who are going to work for less money. Does that like do they sit you down like, we love your film, we want to work with it, who are you thinking of casting? And you're like, whoever we can get, and they're like, oh well, we'll give you Norman Reedus. Like, how does that work?
Yeah, it doesn't work that way.
We'll give you Norman Reedus.
Kirkman's like, he owes me his career pretty much. Boondock Saints, I know. Well, when he hangs up the phone on him.
Well, there's an element of the producers and the agents and all that sort of playing a role, but fundamentally, so we left the story at David Alpert and Robert Kirkman kind of liking the project, and me and Chris Passetta enough to kind of dignify us with a meeting, and then saying that they wanted to be on board. They had notes for the script to kind of make it better, which clearly Robert and David Alpert know a couple of things about story. It was primarily like the third act and little things that we were very happy to, writing is rewriting. Sure. And then they brought on board two other amazing producers, Brian Kavanaugh Jones, who's the executive producer of the Insidious franchise.
Oh, cool.
And the producer of Sinister and a lot of other great movies. Is just finished, I believe, Midnight Special.
Gotcha.
Anyway, Brian Kavanaugh Jones came on board with this company, Automatic, and with them, the Canadian producer, Chris Ferguson, who's now like one of my best friends, and like a great guy, like a filmmaker himself, that he's been in the trenches for so long that I feel like he fought his way out of them. And so these producers came on board, and I believe for a certain amount of time the ball was with them in terms of like getting the movie going.
Sure.
Because that's what people go, what do the producers do in a movie? Well, first of all, they really help to get the script together, and then they really help to get the script financed, which is not like a small thing. And so they got the financial resources together for us to make the movie, and eventually got Sony Stage 6 involved to release it.
Gotcha.
So that's how we went in terms of like finally having a movie that is not just a pile of paper on a table. And then you begin casting, and casting is another whole adventure, and you just hope that you get the people that are going to be great for the part, that are going to make the movie what it needs to be, that are available in the window that you have to shoot, and that you line them up before the movie just loses momentum, and then people just go and do other things. So in a certain way it takes time, and in another it kind of is when if you have a movie or if you don't. And the first actor that we cast was Norman Reedus.
That's a good way to start.
It was a conversation. It was a very easy conversation because the name came up, and when the name came up, I believe everybody was like, this could be great. And I loved The Walking Dead. And when I saw him come on in the first season of The Walking Dead, I just felt like the show had taken on like a whole new dimension. He's great.
Yeah.
And so I chatted with him on Skype, and he read the script, and he had like questions for me, and we considered what kind of character he would be good in, and I believe I felt very strongly that he would be the best Bauer that we could ever have, and he was agreeing with me, so we cast him. He said yes, and that was like a big moment for me personally, because now there was somebody, you can be validated when your producers say, we're going to try and find some money for your movie. But when an actor, and a really good actor, says, I like the material enough to do it and take a chance on it, and maybe even say no to another couple of things that could potentially maybe even pay me more to do this, this is when, first of all, the artistic and moral fiber of these people that are so committed to their art that are like, yeah, I sometimes just want to do something for my acting.
Right.
And also it was like great because it gave me confidence and gave the film momentum. And that's what we needed, because then I feel like Norman did the last final push of this snowball up the little cliff, and then the thing just started going down because of a little show called The Walking Dead. And
I think I've heard of that.
And we had Norman in a window from the end of The Walking Dead to when he needs to shoot The Walking Dead again. So that was when
this movie
needed to happen.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was the best thing that could happen, because that kind of got everybody like really focused, really going. And then we had more conversations and more creative meetings, more names on the table. And then I don't remember where the name of Jaimon Hansu appeared, but the character wasn't initially written for somebody that has his stature and his sort of like physical presence. And I reread the script and watched the movie, and I cannot imagine the film without Jaimon Hansu in it.
He's
it's
great.
Impossible
He's so good in it.
for me to not think of that character and not immediately think of Jaimon Hansu. And that's just how amazing he is. He's so amazing that he has taken a part and he has completely transformed into something that cannot be separated from the movie.
Yeah, so he was fascinating casting for the role too, because he does have a great physical presence, and he plays the more timid of the two characters, which I thought was cool. And and as far as Norman Reedus is concerned, he's a very subtle actor, and I've watched The Walking Dead. Greg got me into it. At first, I wasn't. At first, the season, the first few episodes I'd watched didn't really vibe with me, but now, realizing what that show is a slow burn. That show is watching these characters really, really, really strong character development and watching them evolve over the span of, an entire season and years. And so when, I read the concept for the film and then saw that Norman Reedus, and I was like, this is going to be cool. This is going to be a fun, like subtle, like character study of what these two human beings are in this situation are going to do. And that's exactly what you've delivered with it. So, was there a moment when you were like, after you cast both of them, and you were like, fuck yeah, like this is gonna be kind of dope?
Unfortunately, I was not there psychologically at the time. Psychologically, I was more like
keep going. Yeah.
Yeah, I was more like curved into a ball, trying to not be terrified by the fact that all this was happening, and all of a sudden you're responsible for the money that is given to you to make this film. These actors, I'm not going to say these actors' careers, because I don't think I could have put them naked in front of the camera and it would have done nothing to their careers.
Spoilers, there is one scene where they're naked. No, I'm joking.
Other than, they would have been amazing even in the direst of circumstances, but I feel like there is a sense of responsibility that comes with now all of a sudden making a movie and also the fact that we had very limited amount of time to prep it and shoot it, and very limited money to do it. That were kind of like my concerns. Also, I was, as ridiculous as it sounds, I was coming from a world of entertainment, and video games are part of that world of entertainment where budget was never a concern. I was coming off the performance capture shoot for Shadow of Mordor, which I directed all the cinematics for. So I worked with like Troy Baker and Nolan North and some of
Never
my
heard of
favorite. Yeah.
So you've worked with huge egos before.
They'll deny that I ever existed. So, I was coming off very different sort of like dollar figure situations.
Sure.
And so I also felt sort of like the need to kind of reconfigure some of my thinking in terms of, okay, this has to happen in a matter of minutes, not in a matter of hours.
Sure.
Right. And then, so was that, I imagine that's just added pressure on top of your shoulders of something. All those constraints really do create the perfect pressure cooker for, especially a first-time director to exist in.
Well, but you need pressure. Sometimes you need pressure. They say that you need pressure to make diamonds, and I don't want people to think that this movie is a diamond because it's really rough around a lot of the edges.
It's a diamond in the rough.
But pressure is certainly.
Good job, Greg. And you got to reward him for the good stuff and the bad stuff too. That's how we do it.
That was
here.
a good thing, though, right?
That was all right.
All right, good. Yeah. How'd you know that shoulder was hurting? Good job.
Because that's where you keep all your attention.
I tell you what, Colin, he's got the magic fingers.
I know. Colin knows. We've been in a room alone together.
Colin has been very quiet for a very long time. We need to have him.
I just like listening.
Colin
and
is
you guys keep interrupting.
an
him.
active listener. No, we're adding to the conversation. Actually, Colin, we're adding to the conversation.
We're keeping the
like
flow
listening-
of the conversation.
I like listening to his stories, and I especially like listening to stories of things I don't really understand. So I am an active listener. Yeah. I'm just enjoying it.
So now we've caught back up to Nick's original, where he was taking you. You had to film this movie in fewer than 20 days. And according to Norman Reedus, when I interviewed him at Comic-Con, you did it underground. What the hell does that mean? How does that happen? That's fast for a movie, isn't it?
Yes, that is fast for a movie. I mean, especially for a sci-fi film, and especially for a sci-fi film that looks this good.
Yeah.
So, take us to where did you end up filming this? What was the location? You said you filmed it practically on location.
Yeah, we filmed it on location in Vancouver.
The whole city's underground.
I was gonna say, what location
and we
did
just
you manage
went
to
completely
find?
underground in Vancouver. Well, we just had to. We had like some great location scouts that location supervisors and managers and scouts, and in the very limited amount of time that we had to kind of go and find places, we found some pretty amazing abandoned, deadly. Inhospitable environments in which to shoot,
Vancouver.
which an abandoned power plant, so under an abandoned power plant, because clearly the power plant has all the structural elements that they need to build underneath, and so some of the scenes are under a power plant. A power station. Sorry, we filmed in an abandoned factory. That was not pleasant. And
So how much?
In a mine, we filmed in an abandoned mine, and we in every location we built. Brian Kane, the production designer, and his crew had the wonderful and admirable job of going in there and building sets or pieces of sets into these amazingly unfriendly, cold environments without power, without heat, and they brought everything. So we would go in there, and there would be a semblance of breathable air. There would be warmth at times, and there would certainly be light and electricity. And when we went for the scout, every single time, I was wearing a Navatic exploration parka with a beanie hat.
Right.
Sometimes a respirator and a flashlight, because there was no electricity, nothing. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so was
the
there any safety mechanisms put in place
Oh,
for
yeah,
the
absolutely.
so
They had one canary.
that was it. And they were like, he's dead again.
Get
Well,
out!
get us another damn canary. Why does he keep fucking dying? Stop getting me
All
these
the
faulty canaries.
All the locations were clearly, cleared
Right.
for
Smart. I
for-
hope so.
for the shoot.
Because
Yeah.
I really like The Walking Dead. It would be a shame if Norman Reedus died
No.
prematurely.
It was everything was safe to be in. It was just where they were.
Right.
It was kind of hard.
Sure.
It was kind of hard to you go in an abandoned mine, and it's not like the place itself is going to kill you. It's not going to cave because there's like safety measure after safety measure after safety measure, and the film commission has approved it, and we've done our own
Right.
clearing, and we've measured the air, and and then you go in there and it's freezing
It's
cold,
cold,
and
yeah.
it's raining inside, and so our construction crew, and this is like 30, 40 feet below ground, and our construction crew is going in there building the set,
Mm-hmm.
and it's raining on them and on the set, and I'm there going, put a light over there because there's this water dripping, and I want to make sure that we can see it on film, because
Right.
to do that on a soundstage would be really expensive. You would have to run all the water and make it drip and make
the
the set
irrigation
wet,
and all that stuff, yeah.
and I've got that. Film it.
Right. So you
Right,
got free wet
so-
down, which is nice.
yeah.
I like your mentality. Yeah, I'd be like, it's raining on all the equipment.
Well, we would put like a plastic over the camera.
sure, yeah.
We had very sophisticated means of keeping it dry.
They're called
plastic
trash
bag.
bags. Yeah. But that's what's that? Did you tap me on the shoulder? Did
I?
you need me to stop?
No, you're doing great.
Okay. You tell me to shut up, I'll talk all day. So at
you're
some point,
doing
just
great.
immediately wrap up the show, and I'll make sure that we
Shut up.
kill the canary.
That's cute. That's what you want.
So then you're done. Talk to me about the post process. So how long did it take? There's a fair amount of visual effects work being done as far as some set extensions, which I have to imagine, unless you guys had an amazing jib and you ended up finding that.
Don't
awesome
spoil the movie.
Yeah, okay, sorry, but
Just jib shot, everybody.
So what? So how long did post take, and where did that happen at?
We had very, very limited VFX in the film.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I don't want to spoil it to the audience, but there's only literally 3 shots
That's right.
that are VFX. Everything else is either practical or there is some minor augmentation in terms
Sure.
of like maybe particles,
Right,
and,
right.
that sort of stuff. So VFX took maybe a couple of months or so, but nothing comparable to what it would take to do Iron Man or
Right,
any of that
right.
sort of stuff. All the post was done in Vancouver. I believe the process started in May and ended in October. So
Okay.
May, June, July, August.
Not
So
bad.
about 6 months.
And were you there the whole time for that, or was that more of working remotely?
Oh no, I was there.
So you're in the room, you're in the editing bay the whole time.
I was
kind of
there
making decisions together.
editing, and amazing editor Greg Nig,
Mm.
fantastic. He edited another movie for the same producers, the Automatic company called Afflicted. Afflicted is sort of like a found footage vampire
Okay.
movie, and the guy is just like masterful. Like he's really, really good, and I'm sure he'll do a lot of like movies because he just has an eye for. Well, he has a rhythm for the scene, and also he has an eye for things that you wouldn't think would match,
Right.
and then he cuts them together and they match. And it was a pleasure working with him. Very good storytelling, which is what you want from an editor, because you want another rewrite of the film. So, like I said, you write it, and then when you shoot it, you basically rewrite it, because now you have the actors, you have their ideas, you have the DP, you have his ideas, you have your new ideas, because now you're in an abandoned mine,
Right.
and now
And
you
it's
want to see
raining
the water.
everywhere.
And then you have the editing room, and the editing room is another great place where you can see the movie, you can go, what happens if we take this and kind of move it over here? How is the movie behaving if we do that? And you just get another shot, and then it's a great way for the producers, who are, in my opinion, the first audience. If you have good producers and good executive producers, and the producers of Air were amazing to me and for me, and the people at Sony that the executives on my movie were also not only incredibly supportive, but amazing to work with great taste. And they get to be the first audience. And every good director, in my opinion, listens to his first audience of producers and executive producers, and they will come back with what's called like the studio notes and the producer's notes. And they're just a treasure trove, not of solutions. Sometimes these guys can have pretty good ideas. But even if the idea is not something that maybe you would think it's in line with what you're thinking, the entire problem that they have identified and the need for them to suggest a solution is just an alarm bell for you. It's just a big spotlight.
Sure.
That says, please look at that.
Right.
And here is a freebie idea for us trying to help you. No? Are you making signs? Just
no, I'm saying here's a freebie idea. I'm sure
like,
we're giving people an inside look at how it's happening.
Greg does that.
I look
weird
at the
thing.
camera. I address the people every so often.
I co-host a show with him every day. Does it? It confuses the shit out of me. We've been doing it for co-hosting things
60 years
for 7 years. I do have a question though on this. I think this is an interesting point to what you were actually saying about getting notes and kind of listening to feedback. Is I come from a writing background, but I feel like I'm very independent with it in the sense of I write and I have people edit my stuff and look at it, but I also feel a little bit controlling over my ideas, and I'm like, I don't know that you're necessarily right about what you're, like the intent of what you're.
Sure.
And obviously you've had a collaborative experience many times making games at Rockstar, etc. So I mean, you've already kind of been to that background. But is it weird taking your idea and your script and then really having to trust that everyone else is going to have to execute on this, and you're going to have to just kind of trust them? I know that these people obviously have talent and a resume that you look at and you're like, okay, you're capable of this, but is it weird being like, I have a vision for this and the DP has a totally different vision for this, and I'm kind of listen to him because I trust him more than I even trust myself?
Well, if you have a vision and the DP has a completely different vision, then you're in trouble.
Well, I mean, in terms of you were saying the shots, in terms of like you had mentioned earlier about certain shot, like you might have seen a shot or written down the shot in a way that in your mind looks in a certain way, but the DP might even interpret those words in a different way. Right. So, I mean, certainly there has to be, I'm not saying like straight up conflict where you think he's making a fucking Western and you're making a sci-fi or anything like that. But in terms of like this particular shot is just, trust me, the shot looks better this way.
I just think it always boils down to the quality of the idea. You need to be able to step back and look at the idea that's come up from the gaffer or the DP or whoever, or the script supervisor, and say, this is a great idea. Everybody, we're doing that. And I think that that's your job as a director. You're conducting the orchestra. You're not playing every instrument. And you have these people that are great musicians. You got to let the band play. So as long as you have your job at that point is to just know what's a good idea and what's a bad idea. Is your idea better than their idea? And are you honestly taking a step back and looking at them and not be judgmental, but being creative about these ideas? If you're doing that and you feel your idea is better, then you can also articulate why your idea is better. And then you spend 2 minutes talking to the DP and saying, here's, that's a good idea, but here's why I never thought of that. I never thought of that because I thought of this. And if he is a creative person and he is contributing, then he'll say, oh, right. And then either he goes with your idea or there's a third idea that comes up from your thing and his thing, and it becomes the new thing. And that's the beauty of collaboration. And if his ideas is better, you just go, awesome, thanks for the suggestion. This is a great idea. Let's do that. And you just have to kind of know which one you have to choose. But when people come to you with ideas, you're actually in a really good place, because you have to create an environment where people will come to you with ideas. And on a movie set, you don't start out that way. You start out from a place where people might challenge your ideas, but they are not coming to you with ideas all the time. And that's what you want. You want to create a place where, I would love to just spend time with the construction guys, just building the thing, and just talking to them about the movie. Not because I had a lot of time to waste. I didn't have a lot of time. But still, they were maybe putting it up and I was an hour early on set because I was so nervous that there was no sleeping. And so just by talking to them, they would tell me things about the movie that they liked that they had read the script. And I'm like, the construction people have read the script? This is amazing. And they've done the math about some of the equations that are in the script. This is amazing. And why shouldn't I listen to some of the things they're saying? Because at the very least, they can say, okay, and how about we push it a little more in? But if it's a great idea, it's going to make the movie better.
Yeah.
And it's going to make him work even harder because he's contributing to it, which is why it's called a collaboration, right?
Right.
So I think it really boils down to having confidence in what you're doing. And that kind of confidence gives you the ability to discern a good idea from a bad idea. And then if it's your idea, great. And if it's someone else's idea, great.
Fair enough. That's a good outlook.
We're turning the ship towards home. So we've gone through this entire process of making this movie. The years where you didn't know what was happening with it. Robert Kirkman and DA coming in, saving it. Picking you up as a golden child. Putting you with their first Skybound feature film. My question is, it's Tuesday. The movie finally comes out on Friday. Where are you at mentally?
I'm dying. But thank you for asking.
No, it's pleasure. I can't imagine working on, like, we work on these videos, we put them out, like, the longest lead time is I edited an Oreo and 2 weeks later it goes up. And I'm like, I hope people like it. I kind of forget about it. You know what I mean? For you, this has been a project for so long, and now the finish line's finally there. I can't even fathom what it's like for you. Are you anxious for your reviews? Are you excited? Are you going to read them? Are you going to stay away from them?
Well, first of all, I think we were talking about this earlier before the show started, and I used to be very, very nervous when my first game and my second game and when Manhunt came out. I used to be like, the reviews and are people going to buy it, and my career is over, and why am I doing this? I don't know anything about video games, and I hope nobody finds out at Rockstar because they'll fire me immediately. and then you kind of grow through it, and it becomes more of a process where you're like, people, I hope people like this game. I hope people go buy this game. And I know that there'll be people that will hate it and people that like it. And I hope there's enough people that like it, that they have a good time. And it becomes almost more about the people that enjoy it, as opposed to yourself or
Sure.
the reviews or the money or the getting fired. And it becomes more about what have I learned and what can I do next? What have I learned from Red Dead? What can I use in the next game?
Sure.
And now I'm catapulted all the way back to the beginning, where I'm like, I'm never going to make another movie. The reviews are going to be terrible. And, I'm a hack and I don't know what I'm doing. So I in a way, that's how I feel right now. I would say I hope the reviewers are going to go easy on the film. I know that clearly it's a small production, so there is things to like and things not to like.
Sure.
It's also a first film. And if I look at my first game right now, I wanted to go with E.T. and with the first films. So there's a big pile of stuff. And I don't know if Air belongs to that world or not.
It does not
but
belong. It does
belong.
not belong in the landfill.
No, it does
I
not.
really enjoyed the movie.
It's certainly, no, I didn't mean that, but it's certainly my first film.
Sure.
And so, there's that. But there was also like a sense of really wanting people to enjoy it. Like, you guys seem to have enjoyed it, and that makes me really happy. And I know that Norman and Jaimin are very proud of the film, and that makes me very happy because they go and talk about it very kindly and very nicely. And, again, they're doing it just out of passion. They're not doing it because somebody is giving them bags of gold or something. Mm-hmm. And for that, I'm very grateful. And I'm grateful that you have me here. And ultimately, you do these things. I certainly do these things for the people that go watch them. So I ultimately, I want to be able to say, as much as I'm worried about my mental health, I hope that whatever gets written and whatever gets said, the people in the movie theaters and at home in front of the film enjoy it, love the music, love the visuals, love the story and the characters. And if that happens, then I've done my job. So that's where I hope it goes.
See, that's a great outlook. Have that. Don't be worried. Don't be pulling your hair out.
Yeah, do you know in your head? I like asking game developers this. Do you know in your head when they're? I assume you have an embargo for your reviews for critical reception.
I think it's being lifted.
Okay, so I was gonna say
It's already happening. The bombs are going off.
Yeah, so
the bombs are going
I'm
off.
glad you're here in a safe place.
Because I love asking game developers that question because we know a lot of developers personally and a lot of them obsess over that kind of stuff. So they know exactly when it lifts and they'll get up in the middle of the night if they have to and start reading or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't not. You have to. I mean, that's the thing. That's the burden of creation, right? Is that you have to go through that process, and I can't even imagine what it is. We get the luxury of just sitting back on our thrones over here on our high horses and just picking everything apart critically. But you actually gone out there and created something. And that is amazing, and it's good.
Yeah,
that is the other. And thank you for making something that's actually entertaining, because it makes our jobs a lot easier when we can actually talk to someone from a point of like respect, as opposed to. Actually, I don't think we don't have people on the show that we don't.
Oh no,
I was going to say we've had quite a few creators on this, and generally the beauty of what we get to do is we get to actually pick and choose who we talk to. So we don't have to lament on the negative. We don't have to anymore. We're not forced to criticize everything across the board, which means that we have to indulge in the good stuff and the bad stuff, unfortunately. So we get the luxury of going, hey, this was cool. Let's invite him up here and talk to him about it. And here you are. We fed you really bad Thai food ahead of time, and you look great though.
Whoa, really bad?
It's okay. It's okay. It's overrated Thai food.
Great.
I will say that I think it's been fun, and that's why I like to sit back and listen to people talk. I mean, I think that's why I love TED and all these kinds of things. I just like listening to people. That's why I love documentaries.
Who's
and
TED?
stuff. TED. You know who TED is. Or should I say what? But it's I think you have actually a really amazing way with words and actually analogies, which I think is quite effective in demonstrating your own experience in the gaming industry and movie industry. So I found it. I like to stay out of the way of the interviews when I like you don't have to steer it. You know what I mean? So that's why I wanted. That's why everyone out there know. That's why I was quiet, just listening, learning.
Respect that. Thank you.
Because especially with film, like I know a lot about games, a great deal about games, but I don't know much about film. So I try to absorb.
Yeah.
So I know a little bit more. Like when you were talking about a jib.
You know what that is?
I don't even know if I believe that that's actually a real thing, but
it's a nautical term.
It's like when you go through the
like
tall
the sextant,
glass and you don't want the jibs getting you. You talked about the beauty is that we get to pick creators we want on here to come on because we like their work.
Indeed.
You know what the other beauty thing is?
Everything. What is it?
We get to pick our sponsors.
We do indeed.
And today we're sponsored by Squarespace.com.
Love
You can go start your free trial today, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff. Like when you decide to sign up for Squarespace, make sure you use the offer code KINDAFUNNY to get 10% off your first purchase. Nick.
Yes.
We say this all the time.
All the time.
Because we did pick Squarespace.
We did.
You used Squarespace before they were even a sponsor of the show.
Before it was cool.
Yeah, we were there before we're hipster Squarespace. No,
KindaFunny.com is built on Squarespace platform, and it's fantastic. It's very, very easy. If you guys want to go out there and make a simple tutorial site, or you want a site for your business, it's very, very easy to get both up and running very, very quickly. I stand by the product, and
because everything looks good.
I kind of want to marry it. Actually,
you want to marry?
I'm already married, but I'm thinking on my second marriage, maybe.
You're gonna marry.com.
Marry.com. Well,
this is what the Congress.
It's because it's reconfigurable. I can make it into whatever I want.
Oh,
that's the thing. Can make it anything.
Squarespace gives you 24/7 online support and a beautiful website for only $8 a month. You can even get a free domain if you buy Squarespace for the year. So what are you waiting for? Start a free trial with no credit card required and start building your website today. When you decide to sign up for Squarespace, make sure you use the offer code KINDAFUNNY to get 10% off your first purchase and show your support for us. Kinda funny. Squarespace. Build it beautiful. Christan Cantamessa. You are a treasure, and I'm glad we stole you from Italy. And you're here now with us. I'm just going to say, if you're watching this, it's probably out already. Friday it comes out. Everybody go get it. You can go see it in theaters. You can go down. You can buy it and download it off that. We'll have a link down there to the Amazon version, I'm sure. Thank you so much. Thank you for everything. Thank you for coming up here. Thanks for making great movies, making great games.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for being so kind to have me here and for being the audience that I, always dreamed of having.
Oh, you're very welcome.
That's nice.
That is very nice.
That's a nice compliment.
He always dreamed about you specifically.
Nobody ever says nice things to me on this podcast.
Oh, Nick. Kevin, say something nice to him.
The shit filters this way. So Tim is always fine. Colin no one messes with. You we give shit to. I am basically
this is the position.
The armpit.
Yeah.
And then Kevin is the unfortunate anus.
He's the butt.
Of the group.
Yeah, Kevin's the butthole.
Unfortunate.
Kevin is the crotch.
You're a beautiful butthole.
Kevin Butthole Coelho, we call him. Start Google. Everybody Google that tonight, so it'll be show as a Google search result.
Why?
If you didn't know, this has been the Game Over Greggy Show. Each and every week, 4, sometimes 5 best friends gather on this table. Each bring a random topic of discussion for your amusement.
went faster.
That's my norm. I say when I say this table, I do it. It's how I keep up. If you want to throw us a few bucks, go to patreon.com/kindafunny. You get each and every episode early. But if you have no money to give us, no problem. Go to youtube.com/kindafunny. Monday through Thursday, we break it out topic by topic before posting the entire show on Friday for you to enjoy. And if it's a Friday, it doesn't even matter. Any Friday, Air is out. Go get Air. Go watch Air. Norman Reedus. Christian. What else you want? He's an amazing person. Support him. You support Aria, do you see? He actually made something.
Yeah.
Colin and I don't make anything except funny.
We made a lot of things. We made Podcast Beyond.
Sure.
We made
Games
Colin and
Cast.
Greg Live.
Yeah. I mean, we make
Kinda Funny
things.
Games Cast, Game Over Greggy Show.
But again, like we didn't have to go into a bunker and film water.
No.
We didn't have to kill a canary.
No.
You killed a canary? This man has
well,
strangled
Don't
canaries
answer that
to
question.
death.
As your legal counsel, don't answer that question. Until
Not
next
allowed to
time.
talk about death.
It's been our pleasure to serve you.